Hello and welcome back, listeners, to the Mindful Living podcast with your host, Sana. Today, we are stepping into the wild and wonderful intersection of art, nature, and the modern world with none other than Christopher Grant Ward. Christopher isn't just an award winning artist, listeners, whose breathtaking nature inspired furniture pieces have been featured in Architectural Digest and NPR. He's also the voice behind the Rebel Nature podcast. On his show, Christopher talks and dives deep into how nature can rewire our brains and transform the way we see time, technology, language, and even our childhood memories. From scientific illustration to sustainable design, and from theatrical stagecraft to nature's redemptive power, Christopher invites us to rethink our dual relationship with the modern and natural world. So, listeners, if you have ever felt out of sync with the fast paced, rigid grid of modern life, or if you just want to hear how a master craftsman and naturalist finds mindfulness in the chaos, this conversation is for you. So let's get started and dive right into with Christopher. Christopher, welcome to the show, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much.
So, Rebel Nature is such an evocative title, Christopher. What inspired you, the name of your podcast, and how does it reflect your own journey as an artist and also a naturalist?
Yeah. So we live wherever you live in a modern world, a world strongly affected by social media, our telephones, our interior lifestyles that in many cultures require air conditioning and right-angled walls and certain aspects of interior design, the ways we eat and prepare our food. All of these things are part of a system that we sort of are born into, a modern world. But when things get difficult, when things get challenging, when we need to go on vacation, when we need to escape, where do we go? Whether you live in Canada, United States, Mexico, Europe, India, we go outside. We need to leave this place to sort of reconnect with some other aspect of ourselves that we inherently, instinctively know, but we aren't always in touch with. We need to escape our sense of time in modern society. We need to escape our sense of language and technology and information. And we need to go back to something that we actually evolutionarily are more hardwired to love and enjoy, and that's nature. So the rebellion is simply the rejection that normal life is this modern life, that actually normal life is much closer to a life outdoors. And so the podcast and all of my work as an artist is about helping people in small ways and large ones reconnect with the natural world in a way that will bring you more joy and satisfaction, and help, as you said, help people rewire their brains and change their perception of everyday things.
Wow. Wow. That's really beautiful and inspiring at the same time. It is necessary because with the context of today's modern society and, kind of that boxed in, feelings we have, both physically and mentally, I think this is the need of the hour. So really appreciate what you're doing, Christopher, and thank you so much for sharing with all of us.
You're welcome.
So, as you mentioned, how nature can rewire our brains. Can you share an example of how a specific element of nature, let's say, just take maybe park or a forest or tree or mountain, my favorite is obviously mountains, has transformed your perspective on life?
Yeah. So, um, I'll talk about my personal experience in a moment, but there have been studies in the United Kingdom, in Sweden, actually in India as well, where it takes some form of this, where you take two groups of people and you have one group take a walk in a natural setting, like you mentioned, like a park or a national forest or something. Another group is walking down the street on the sidewalk, listening to cars and automobiles and the sounds and the sights of urban environment. You take those two groups and you bring them back and you have them take any number of cognitive tests, either for short-term memory, for cognitive processing or reasoning, emotional evaluations of satisfaction and happiness, and always the group that was in nature will outperform the group that is been exposed to an urban environment. So what does that mean? What that means, what scientists are exploring, is how the modern world is actually overwhelming in terms of signal processing and absorption, in terms of our ability to sort of use our brain in this modern environment. It actually is quite taxing on us. So for me, a walk in the park, what happens during a walk in the park? There's a number of things. Um, to some degree, if you let it, time as we know it disappears. This sense of wasting time, saving time, getting time back, making the most of time. A walk in the park is sort of a rebellion against that sensibility, the sense of time being this oppressive thing that guides our lives every day. So we're using nature as a way to sort of step out of that mode, or to step out of the mode of, as I mentioned, all of the signals that are coming from your phones, coming from your computers, billboards, messaging, everywhere, especially if you live in large cities. Um, the natural world is like, another way to describe it is a undesigned world. It's a world that we don't control. And we enjoy it for that reason. In fact, that's what we preserve it for. We know instinctively that cities need parks because there needs to be some alternative. Otherwise, it just will be too much. And studies have shown that when cities don't have those open green spaces, there's more crime, there's more suicide, there's more unhealthy eating and drinking habits, and all of those factors. So me personally, I create my furniture in an indoor-outdoor setting. I make sure to plant my bare feet on the ground outside to stay grounded to the earth and understand where I am. Um, an understanding of, our actual internal clocks. We're speaking about time, our circadian rhythms, but also what's called your ultradian clock, which is, if you've ever experienced it, this sense of like being in a flow state, or almost like daydreaming while you're working, and you're just in this mode where you're not keeping track of time, but you're just deeply enjoying or deeply concentrating on your work. And that's something that humans carry with them that we don't really tap into all of the time. So making sure that it's not just being in nature, but being in touch with your natural self, and the self that isn't guided by alarm clocks and calendars and schedules and things like that.
True. True. Once again, what a beautiful explanation, Christopher. And of course, I truly agree with you because we have had so many conversations with some of the esteemed guests who have thrown light on the importance of number one, sunlight. Just going for a 15-minute or a half an hour maybe, instead of going for smoke breaks or just chit chats, you can just go into sunlight, get some sunlight, and you soak into that natural glow, because it also helps maintain that circadian rhythm. That's really beautiful what you explained. So
Yeah,
when
sunlight, it's funny. I'm sorry to interrupt, but sunlight it tells us, tells our bodies so many things that we should or shouldn't be doing. Um when to wake up, when to eat, when's the optimal time to rest, when's the optimal time to sleep. And when we alter that with, artificial light and uh, you know, uh, not adapting to the seasonal cycles of night and day, we sort of limit our ability to experience the world as we're meant to. So sunlight is one of the most important things to get. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
great, great, Chris. So as you balance the old world craftsmanship of your furniture, how do you also balance it with the demands of modern aesthetics?
Well, what I've discovered actually is that, and especially since COVID and with the onset of AI, my clients are actually much more interested in things that are handmade, things that are one of a kind, that have a natural asymmetry to them, like the things that we see in nature. No two leaves are the same, no two clouds are the same. Um, typically in interior design, in furniture design, when you say you're going to give it sort of like an organic, you know, uh, aspect or aesthetic, that usually means something like a grid of monkeys and elephants on a wallpaper, or some sort of like very specific mathematically repeating pattern. And what I've actually found is what people enjoy is this idea of an asymmetrical form in their house. There's a misconception that humans see beauty in symmetry. That's actually not totally true. A human face or an object needs to have enough symmetry for you to understand that it's organized. But if it's too perfect, we have a sixth sense that this is not a true natural. Yeah. And if you go on my website, christophergrantward.com, and in my blog you can find a couple of really interesting photos that people have done of famous people, Kim Kardashian, Ryan Reynolds, Harrison Ford. You take one side of their face and the other side of their face and put them together, and they look completely different. We all have a natural asymmetry, which is part of the charm that we actually find attractive in each other. And we find that throughout the natural world. So when I create the aesthetic that people are looking for, I'm actually finding is this sense of a slightly, I guess the word you could say is imperfect, but slightly more handmade item. And so I'm actually noticing that the modern aesthetic is sort of moving back to that. In the 1920s, about 100 years ago, um, we were sort of in the height of the Art Nouveau movement. And the Art Nouveau movement was a backlash or a revolt against the Industrial Revolution, where things were being mass produced, where they were being, built on assembly lines. And people were actually valuing this idea that everyday things, that your lamps, that your vases, your forks and knives, your furniture would be aesthetically pleasing and actually considered to be pieces of art. And we've lost that. Now we have big box stores in whatever country you're in. We have online retailers where you can just get things for as cheap as possible, regardless of their impact on sustainability or an environment. And there is no sense that these things should be special, uh, heirloom types of things that you can have for your entire life that you can pass down. But my clients actually are hiring me to make tables and chairs and side tables and coffee tables that they can give to their children for wedding gifts or to commemorate a loved one who has passed. In terms of a modern aesthetic, I'm actually seeing a shift away from clean lines, modernism, and perfection towards this more natural style of experiencing your house and your interior.
Wow. Lovely, Chris. So, talking about your podcast, time is a recurring theme in your work and also your podcast, as you mentioned about the 1920s and now today's modern world. So, how do you think our relationship with time has shifted in the modern era, and what can nature teach us about reclaiming it?
Yeah. Um, there is an episode of my podcast, Rebel Nature, that talks about how we understood time as a society before and after the invention of the clock.
Mhm.
Before the invention of the clock, we had things we did. We had a schedule in our head. We had a list of tasks, regardless of your social status. We knew what our day was going to be about, but we weren't sort of governed by concepts like the hour or the minute or the second. Like we had those concepts that things could take an hour or a minute or a second, but we didn't really think of the day as divided into 24 parts, and those 24 parts are divided into 60 parts, and those 60 parts are divided into 60 parts, and that all of those things are commodities that we can use or waste or take advantage of or not. What the clock did was sort of coordinate, like all inventions that have like a good intention. Everything from language to social media has been created to sort of help us work together as a society, and the clock was no different. The clock allowed people to coordinate schedules, starting with people walking into the town square and looking at the church and seeing what time it was and sort of taking note from that and sort of staying in sync. But then once time became portable, we all could govern ourselves by these rules. So then you and I, it's helpful in many ways. You and I are across the world from each other, but we knew to connect at, for me, it was 10:30. For you, it was a different time, but we knew how to do it. So there is some utility to that. But the problem that I talk about in the podcast is your entire day has been governed by time. So everyone listening, you, me, we woke up at a certain time. No matter when you woke up on time, you woke up early, or you woke up late. You then needed to eat breakfast because it's breakfast time. Not necessarily because you're hungry or not, but because it's breakfast time. You have a lot of devices in your house, like washing machines and dishwashers and cars and blenders and other things to save time, to help you get through those tasks quicker so you can ostensibly do other things. You had this podcast with me. I'm sure you have other podcasts you're doing today. I'm sure you have a large schedule of things that you have to do, as well as things you have to do for you and your family. Um, there's a certain time you're going to go to sleep tonight, and that time is going to be early, or if you're like me, it's always too late, or it's on time. And if you think about it, time is governing our entire lives in terms of this sense of the clock. But what's even more important to realize is that what you consider your life is also completely governed by time. So anything that you regret is part of your past. Anything that you remember in a positive way is part of your past. Anything that you're planning to do, anything you hope for, anything that is a dream that you have, that's part of your future. And anything that you think about yourself in this moment is part of your present. And without those, you wouldn't have any sense of self or identity or life. The sense of living life is completely contained within our sense of time. So if we start manipulating that, commoditizing that, telling people that time is money and that an hour spent, gazing up at the sun is a wasted hour because you could have been doing something more productive with that, something that would have made you money. When you start creating an entire world, entire society across the globe that has those sentiments imbued within it, you start kind of changing your sense of not just time, but like your life and like what matters and what's important to do when you wake up every day. So we have to be careful of that. And again, an escape to nature is a place not without time in the sense that like the sun rises and sets, but a natural place doesn't have this schedule to it. And so one of the things I love doing more than anything is like long distance backpacking. For me, I'm in California, so it's the Sierra Nevadas, but anywhere in the world, there's places to go where you can hike for days at a time. And sort of, it's not that you are outside of, you're just sort of, it's not that you forget about time as much as you just aren't governed by it. And there's a relief to that. Other people do it by sitting on the beach and throwing their phone away, right? There's so many ways to do it. But one of the biggest reasons we don't like having these things is because it's telling us what to do and when and what we're missing out on and what else we could have been doing. Like this device tells us way too much about lost opportunities and FOMO, and all of those things have to do with our understanding of how we're living our lives in time.
That's right. That's right. Lovely, lovely, Christopher. What a lovely conversation and
Yeah,
beautifully.
this is fun.
Yeah. So if our listeners they want to connect with you, Chris, and want to explore about your podcast, Rebel Nature, they want to listen to it, and also the beautiful blogs you have written with the beautiful pictures there on your website, how they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way is to go to my website, which is ChristopherGrantWard.com. And my Instagram is actually the same. It's at Christopher Grant Ward. But if you go to my website, you can easily click the nav link for podcast or blog. You can also see my furniture there. I'd love to get in contact with you. I love talking about these topics with people. And like I said, my Instagram is also a great way to sort of keep in touch with what I'm doing day to day and have dialogues about these ideas of nature and aesthetics and our interiors and how we can make them more positive natural places that have less stress and more joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful. Great. We'll have all the details mentioned for the listeners in the show notes. And
Fantastic.
Akbar, thank you so much for this incredible conversation, helping us exploring the hidden ways nature rewires our brains to also uncovering how it can transform our perceptions of time, language, and technology. So, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Sana. I appreciate it.
Listeners, if today's discussion sparked something in you, be sure to check out Christopher's podcast, Rebel Nature, where he dives even deeper into these fascinating topics. And don't forget to explore his award winning art pieces. Trust me, they're beautiful, beautifully, aesthetically beautiful.
Thank
The
you very much.
beauty of nature into everyday spaces. You can actually see how he's creating them. So, thank you for tuning in to the Mindful Living podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, share it with someone who could use a little more nature in their life. You can also follow us on Instagram at the rate mindfulliving.thisblend. Until next time, remember to stay curious, stay connected, and as always, stay mindful. Thank you.